Hi, my name's John Capobianco, and today we're going to be looking at a very, very important aspect of artificial intelligence agents, which is the observability. Organizations want to see where and what LLMs are being used, how many tokens they're using, how much it's costing them if they're using cloud models, or even on-prem models, what the cost might be that you're saving. Being able to trace at a trace level your LLM applications. So we've seen that I've made a space LangGraph in the LangGraph platform, and we visualize it in the LangGraph studio and test it and observe it. We're going to be adding LangSmith. Now the LangGraph studio portal is in LangSmith, and we need a LangSmith key for this to work. So we already have the LangSmith key. Let's apply the LangSmith key at a Python level in our code with a .env update. So we're using a .env file to store our keys. We're going to store a few more variables in the environment file and then tap into that environment file. And when our Python code runs, when we're making API calls, when we're making LLM calls, send all of that trace information to LangSmith where we can visualize it. So let's take a look at this. Now in LangChain, under docs, there is LangSmith. And I recommend you look at this, but it's for observability primarily. I'm going to use this primarily for the observability capabilities. Now, we're going to find an easier way to do this, and that's through just starting a new project. So, we are not using LangChain. We are using LangGraph. So this is sort of the legacy way of doing things. Now, without LangChain, and we're going to zoom in a little bit here, we're going to pip install LangSmith into our Docker environment. We're going to add these keys, the LangSmith project, LangSmith endpoint, and LangSmith tracing true to our .env file. Then we're going to bring in a couple of LangSmith functions and tools from Python. So we're going to bring in traceable, and we're going to bring in a wrapper that wraps around our OpenAI client. So we're just simply going to wrap our OpenAI client, and we're going to make traceables at traceable. So what does this look like in the code? I'm not going to show you my .env file, but my .env file has been updated. And if we just do a find in files and look for at traceable, you're going to see I have traceables in all of my Python scripts now, my nodes and my graph. So each individual node, I'm wrapping the primary function as a traceable. And in order to do this, I'm bringing in the LangSmith traceable. Now in my LangGraph, I'm bringing in the traceable, but I'm also bringing in the wrapper because I'm using ChatGPT here. Okay, and you're going to see my wrapper around ChatGPT somewhere near the bottom or wherever ChatGPT is invoked. So we have the traceables in all of our code, and we've added the required LangSmith imports. All right, so now it's up and running and ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to reset our zoom in the browser, and what we're going to do is go into our LangSmith homepage. So this is smith.langchain.com, likely going to be your central portal moving forward because we can get to the studio from here as well. So remember, here's my studio. Now, I've had some funny issues with the ISS. Sometimes they don't answer Pythonically, but we'll try it. But this weather API works very well. So how do we do this? The first thing we're going to do is go into our tracing projects. And from our homepage, you can see setup tracing, and it brings you to this, okay? The other thing is that we have dashboards, and we'll come back to dashboards. But I've set up a project here in my tracing projects, and this is my space graph project. So let's look at the last run. Okay, where is the ISS? We can see if we hide the waterfall or look at the waterfall, let's look at the waterfall. The space agent took 4.18 seconds to run, right? The router node was invoked, and then the LLM router node, which passed in the user input to ChatGPT to pick the routing function of ISS locator node. Okay, the weather function wasn't called, and we moved on to the natural language answer and ChatGPT's interpretation of where the human is. Okay, and we can see this as the default output. There is the answer that we got from the AI, and there is the original user input. All right, now we don't have to look this as a waterfall, but we can interrogate every individual step in the trace. The other thing is that we can do is provide feedback for this, or look at the feedback, get all of the metadata that we need here. We can add this to a data set or an annotation queue. We can share it, and we can run the annotate it here, right? Now, if we go back here to our runs, if I collapse all this stuff, we can see the start time, the latency for this one was 4.81 seconds. Whereas this one here before it, which was how was the weather in Tokyo, which called the weather node function, seemed to return a lot faster. Some of these earlier ones which actually timed out and failed with the ISS locator have super high latency. We can see the number of tokens and the actual cost that these runs cost me to run, right? So that's the root runs. We have the LLM calls. We have all runs. We can filter this on just the last hour or the last 3 hours or whatever, right? So let's filter this on 1 hour and we'll do a new call. And actually, before I do that, let's take a look at the threads. So these are the individual threads. And if I pick, right, this thread here, this actually has a REST API that I could call against this thread. We can see the total tokens and cost and the latency. Okay? So that is the thread with one trace within it. Now if I go here, we can start new threads or we can look at older threads. And here's that thread in our studio. Okay, and we can start a new thread. Now if we go back to our graph, we have this monitor capability. And if we change this to the last 9 hours, we have all of these different graphs available to us, visual outputs, right? And we can actually add these or blow them up and save them as PNG or CSVGs. Now I'd love for us to be able to take this and just click on add to dashboard. I don't know that that's a possibility yet. But if we go back to our home page, I've set up a dashboard for Spacegraph, and I've started to add different dashboards that interest me, my latency and my total cost. Okay, and we just add a chart here, pick our project, pick the metric we want. Let's look at error rate. And there are no errors, but we'll keep an error rate up here and add this as error rate. And now I have an error rate added there. Okay, so let's go back to our tracing projects and let's make this the last hour. And let's go ahead and run one. So let's try the space one. I don't know if that it's going to respond, but where is the ISS and what is the weather like there? Weather like there right now. And we're going to submit and we're going to watch it trace through here. And there's the latitude, longitude, but we didn't get weather data because it's probably over the ocean or something right now where there's no weather. Okay, that's fine. And that's turn 1, right? So now let's just ask who is in space right now and submit that. And we'll see it route to a different API and get the 10 astronauts in space and give us the natural language answer. So if we go back here, here are our runs. We have our 2 different questions that we've asked. We can see the latency. So the who is in space right now was a little bit longer than the where, but we didn't get the answer back. We can see the tokens and the cost. And if we drill into who is in space right now as a waterfall, we can see that it passed off to the astronauts in space right now. And there's the answer, which passes off to the natural language node, which then gives us the human output. Really cool, right? So I recommend taking the extra steps, right? So if you go into tracing projects, new project, either LangChain or not LangChain, right? Add some traceables, wrap your client, and it doesn't have to be OpenAI. There are other wrappers if you're using a different LLM. All right? So thank you. I think observability, this is a little bit more wide-reaching because there's people that maybe aren't doing AI, but they support an organization that is doing AI, and they want to make sure it's secure, that they're using the right LLMs, the traceability, the visibility. Also, you have developers that want to monitor their apps. How are they doing? Is the flow proper in the waterfall? Where is the latency? How can we improve it? How does it work with different LLMs? What if I swapped out ChatGPT for Gemini and made the exact same chain? How is the latency different, right? Full observability. Now, this didn't cost me anything. I believe there are going to be paid versions and paid cloud services of these tools for your enterprise level. But right now, as an individual, this is incredible to be able to peel the onion down to a trace level and really see what my AI agents are doing, how they're interacting, how long it's taking, how much it's costing me. Okay, so really tap into LangSmith. Thank you.